The Middle East Institute at Georgia State University presents Arabic Grammar Unpacked. In this lesson, we will be discussing the Mustar, or verbal noun, an important part of every Arabic verb. In a previous lesson, we learned about how to make one verb subordinate to another. In this sentence, we have la uhibbu. The first verb is in the mudara marfu, the regular present tense, as we can see from the dhamma. An ahdura, the second verb, is in the mudara mansub, as we can see from the dhamma, and also because it comes after the particle an. Asaf fi sabah, I don't like to attend class in the morning. What we're really saying here is, I don't like that I attend class in the morning. There's another way to make this same sentence. What we can use is what's called the masdar, or verbal noun. I can say, La uhibbu hudur asaf fi sabah. The word hudur is what we call a masdar, or verbal noun. It's a noun, not a verb, but it's derived from the verb hadara. It represents the act of attending. So when I say, La uhibbu hudur asaf fi sabah, what I'm really saying is, I don't like the attending of class in the morning. As another example, we can say, Hal turiduna an tadrusu fil maktaba? Do you all want to study in the library? Of course, what we're really saying is, do you all want that you all study in the library? We can use the mustar of the verb darasa, which is ad-dirasa, and we can say, Hal turiduna ad-dirasa fil maktaba? Do you want the act of studying in the library? In English, we'd say, do you want to study? But Arabic lacks what we call an infinitive, so we do it a different way. Both of these ways of saying the same thing are completely interchangeable. There's really no real difference between them. Using the mustar is slightly more formal, but both of them are quite common in both the written language and in everyday speech. As a review, every verb in Arabic has 5 parts. Amila, the maldi or past or perfect tense. Ya'malu, the mudari or present or imperfect tense. Here we have al-amal, the act of working. In English grammar, this is called a gerund, a noun derived from a verb. Al-Kitaab prefers the term verbal noun, which is actually a little bit more descriptive, as very few American students are likely to know what the word gerund means. The last 2 parts, al-amil, the isim fa'il or active participle, the person doing that action, and ma'mul, the isim maf'ul or passive participle, the person or object that has had that action done to them. In this lesson, we're going to be concentrating on al-Mustar, the gerund or verbal noun. The Arabic word Mustar means source, like source of water or source of knowledge. The plural is masaldir. So in this lesson, we're going to be talking about al-amal, the Mustar of the verb amila. Al-amal means the act of working, and it describes the action being taken when one is working. And this is the case for every Arabic verb. Every Arabic verb has a masdar, and that describes the act of performing that action. Every verb has 5 parts. We can take other verbs that we know. For example, darasa, yadrusu, ad-dirasa, daris, madrus. This is the verb for to study. So we have its past tense, its present tense, its masdar, its isim fa'il, and its isim maf'ul. In this case, the masdar of the verb is ad-dirasa, whereas in the previous case we have al-amal. Now notice that for the other 4 parts of the verb, they look almost exactly the same, except for some very minor changes in voweling in the past tense and present tense. In fact, the isim fa'il and isim maf'ul look exactly the same. They have what we call the same wazn, the same pattern in Arabic. But the masdars are completely different. Let's take another example. The verb kataba, to write. Really, kataba means he wrote, but it's also the name of the verb. We say kataba yaktubu al-kitaba, katib and maktub. Notice that al-kitaba and ad-dirasa have the same wazn. This is just coincidence. There's no particular reason why they have this wazn and not another. Another verb, arafa ya'rifu al-ma'rifa. Here we've put a meme on the beginning of the 3 root letters, which also isn't particularly uncommon. Now, if you notice the 5 parts of each verb, again, the past tenses are all almost exactly the same. The only thing that changes from one verb to the next is the vowel on the middle consonant. The same goes with the present tense. Sometimes we use fatha, sometimes we use dhamma, sometimes we use kasra as the middle vowel. There's no particular rhyme or reason to these vowel changes. When you learn a new verb in Arabic, you have to learn what vowel it takes on the past tense, what vowel it takes on the present tense, and then the hardest thing to learn is what the pattern of its masdar is. There's no rhyme or reason to what the masdar of a verb is going to be from its 3 root letters alone. So when you learn a new verb, at first al-Kitaab just gives you the present tense of verbs. Later on it starts to do it correctly the way that an Arab would learn it in class. You learn its past tense, its present tense, and its masdar all at once. So if you're learning the verb amila, you would learn it as amila ya'malu al-amal, and that way you know that it takes kasra in the past tense, fatha in the present tense, and its masdar is al-amal and not something else. The same goes for darasa. You learn it as darasa yadrusu ad-dirasa. This makes it easy to learn all 3 forms of the verb at once. You don't have to go looking for any of them, and then you have full command over the verb. Because if you'll notice, the ism fa'il, the 4th column, and the ism maf'ul, the 5th column here, are all exactly the same in terms of their wazn. They all have the fa'il and the maf'ul wazn, and all that's changed from one verb to the next is their root letters. So really, we can just gray them out here because you can derive them just from knowing the 3 root letters of the verb. What's really important are the first 3 columns. Again, the vowel on the middle consonant in the past tense, the vowel on the middle consonant in the present tense, and the form of the masdar. So learn the verb kataba as kataba yaktubu al-kitaba. Learn the verb arafa, to know, as arafa ya'rifu al-ma'rifa. And you can't go wrong. You now have full command over these verbs, and you can derive the other 2 forms. Let's make sure we understand about a crucial difference between the masdar and the present tense. We often translate into English the masdar of a verb with the ing suffix. So this sentence here reads, I do not like attending class in the morning. But sometimes we'll use the ing suffix for another closely related use. We can say, for example, he is not attending class this morning. That's the regular present tense. In English, we use the ing suffix to represent 2 slightly different things. In the first case, the act of attending class. In the second case, what's called the present progressive tense, he is attending class. This difference is hard to spot for a lot of native English speakers because we don't spend a lot of time thinking about these things. So the key takeaway from this is to learn that the masdar means the act of doing that particular thing. So if you can substitute in the words the act of before the ing word, then you know you can use the masdar. If you can't, then you have to use the regular present tense in Arabic. So in the first example here, we say, La uhib hudur as-saf fi sabah. I don't like the act of attending class in the morning. So there we can use a masdar. But if we said he is not the act of attending class this morning, that wouldn't make any sense. And so we know we have to use the regular present tense rather than the masdar. Take a look at another example. Hal turiduna ad-dirasa fil maktaba? Do you all want the act of studying in the library? So here we can use the masdar. But in the second example, hal tadrusuna fil maktaba? Are you studying in the library? We couldn't say, are you the act of studying in the library? Because that wouldn't make any sense. So here we have to use the regular present tense. So please pay attention to the idea that the masdar is a noun, and it represents the act of doing that particular action. And it isn't used where we would use the regular present tense with an ing suffix in English. This is something English speakers don't spend a lot of time thinking about, but it makes a crucial difference in Arabic, so please pay attention. Again, we can use the particle an and the mudari' mansub to subordinate one verb to another. So, la uhibbu an ahdura as-saf fi sabah. I do not like that I attend class in the morning. We can always substitute in the masdar of the verb for the an and the mudari' mansub, the present subjunctive. So instead of writing an ahdura, we can simply write hudur. Now, right now what we have here is hudur as-saf. This is an idafa, the attending of class in the morning. And that's why there's no alif lam on hudur. Another example, we can say, Hal turiduna an tadrusu fil maktaba? Do you all want that you all study in the library? We can substitute for the an and the mudari' mansub, the masdar of the verb. So here we can say, هل تريدون الدراسة في المكتبة? And here, because the dirasa is not in an idafa because it's followed by a preposition, we use alif lam on it. We always use alif lam when we're discussing something in the abstract in Arabic. So once again, we can always substitute out the masdar of the verb for the n plus the mudari' mansub. Don't make the mistake of leaving the n in there and using the masdar, which is pretty common for intermediate students. The masdar substitutes for the n and the mudari' mansub at the same time. One thing for those of you who have learned the i'rab or case marking system that will be a little bit confusing is that sometimes you have to make some changes here. So for example, if we're using full voweling, we could say لا أحب أن أحضر الصف في الصباح. The word asaf here is in the mansub case because it's the direct object of the verb ahdura. So it gets a single fatha to mark it. But if we use the masdar instead, we say لا أحب حضور الصف في الصباح because here hudur and asaf are in an idafa relationship. Hudur gets to be marked in the mansub case because now it's the direct object of the verb ahabba, and asaf, because it's a non-first word in an idafa, is in the majrur case and is marked with a single kasra. This is the sort of thing that won't prevent you from speaking well and being understood, but is crucial for making the jump between being an intermediate and an advanced student. Let's take another example. هل تريدون أن تدرسوا التاريخ? In this case, at-tarikh, history, is the direct object of the verb tadrusu, so it's in the mansub case and is marked with a single fatha, though in point of fact, usually the last word in a sentence doesn't get a case marking. I'm just doing it here for the sake of argument. If I substitute in for the masdar, I say, هل تريدون دراسة التاريخ? And now I've created an idafa here. The noun dirasa, because remember, the masdar is a noun, not a verb, even though it's derived from a verb, is in the mansub case because it's the direct object of the verb turidun now. And at-tarikh is marked with a single kasra because it's a non-first word in an idafa. This is a complicated grammatical issue, and most of you probably won't get it right the first few times, but it's worth thinking about as you start using masdars more and more. You can use the masdar as the subject of a sentence. So here we have hudur as-saffi huwa miftah an-nujah. What we're saying here is attending class is the key to success. And in this case, we've used hudur as the act of attending class. We've used it in an idafa with asaf. This is a very common way to begin a sentence in Arabic. We can say, الدراسة في المكتبة أفضل من الدراسة في البيت. Studying in the library is preferable to studying at home. So we've used ad-dirasa here as the subject of the sentence, and that's why it's marked with a single dhamma. We can use it as the object of a preposition. We can say يستغرق الطالب في كتابة الواجبات. The student is absorbed in writing the assignments. And here, kitaba has been marked with a single kasra because it comes after the preposition fi, so it's in the majrur case, and it's definite because it's in an idafa with al-wajibat. Or we can say, al-amalu fi sabah al-ahad la yu'jibuni. Working on Sunday morning does not please me. This is a better way to say, I don't like working on Sunday morning. Here again, it's the subject of the sentence. It's very, very common to use masdars in sentences, not just after verbs like want and might and must and could and can, but as the regular subject of the sentence, in the middle of a sentence, as the object of a preposition, and so forth. You'll see them everywhere, and they're really worth getting to know because they can vastly expand your ability to express yourself in Arabic. Now, to negate the masdar, we have to keep in mind that the masdar is a noun, not a verb, even though it's derived from a verb. So here we have Hiwayati al-mufaddala laysat hudur asaf. My favorite activity is not attending class. So because hudur is a noun, we have to use the verb laysa to negate it, not the la that we would typically use for a present tense verb. I can say laysa al-amal fi sabah alladhi yuz'ijuni. It's not working in the morning that annoys me. This is a sentence you wouldn't hear people say a lot, but I'm using it as an example to show that you use the verb laysa to negate the masdar. You don't use the particle la because the masdar is a noun, not a verb. Another place that we use the Mustar a lot is in making lists, and this is a great way to get to learn the Mustars of the verbs you already know. Every day, if you sit down and you make a to-do list for yourself, you use the Mustar, where in English you would use a verb. So here we have our first item for the day, attending class. In English, if we were writing a to-do list, we'd probably say attend class, and that's a command form of a verb. In Arabic, we would use the masdar of the verb. So what I'm really saying here is the act of attending class. Our next item, ad-dirasatu fil mektaba, studying in the library. If I were to write this in English, I'd probably say study in the library. In Arabic, I say the act of studying in the library. Then, kitabatul wajibat, writing the assignments. Then, al-amal, work. And this is my to-do list for the day. So what you can do to learn the mustars of the verbs you already know is to start making lists of the things you have to do that day, and that will get you caught up with the verbs you know. And then for new verbs that you learn, remember that it's essential to learn all three parts at once, the past tense, the present tense, and the mustar.